almost always
And
open.
reliable.
And we are Thursday morning, April 16th, 2026. House Transportation Committee, continuing to watch the evolving events downstairs in the basement, working on our House bill to see what they can return back up here to the penthouse. But I hear rumors that it might go out of
I
transportation
like it.
today and might head to finance, and we'll see what kind of trouble that brings. So keep your eyes downward to see what's happening. And we're going to continue to work on the miscellaneous motor vehicle S326. I think Deputy Commissioner Russo is joining us. There's 4 or 5 sections we haven't heard the DMV's opinions on. So if you want to start out, figure out where we are on section 7, I think, to start, and work our way through.
Matt Russo, Deputy Commissioner for DMV, long time no see. And I think we're going to start with section 7. It's the first on the list. Insufficient funds. So these are NSF fees that currently apply to per statute to return checks. And as you know, as we advance with technology, there are more ways to pay, not just a check. And we're still incurring fees for electronic payments, not just for checks. And so this amendment would include any fees that were received and returned to the bank for non-sufficient funds. I know there were some questions about suspension or paying the fees. By statute, we do have to give them a time frame for a suspension. And on top of that, we give them 30 days to pay the fees in full.
In practice, you give them 30 days longer than
A total of 30. I believe it's 15 days is required for a suspension notification.
Representative Pound.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. So just to clarify, this is just adding the new electronic fund transfer, not increasing the costs or the fees or anything like that, handling them just like a bag fee.
Exactly, correct.
Thanks.
We did have, I don't remember, I guess that was all the question there was. There was a couple of notes when we originally had it, and this was originally requested by the DMV for recognition of what's happening today.
I think I just had concerns around just the notification of somebody like snowbirds that are mailing it out. And they don't realize that it balanced, just how that process works for the notification. But I guess that is what it is. Nothing.
We are working to currently, if not already, to forward mail that was previously not forwarded,
Yeah.
to remove that little stamp on the envelope. So if they are in Florida, they would get their mail forwarded if they had a forwarding address.
What's the kind of percentage of work that gets done by the mail now compared to what's almost entirely on DMV account and whatnot? With the My DMV, I mean, how much mail transactions and work? I remember it used to be a big deal to open the mail every day to process it, but what's that look like nowadays?
I don't have a percentage for you. I do know that we still receive a lot of mail for registrations, but we're trying to move people towards online notifications with their My DMV account. So rather than having to wait for something through the mail, even suspension notices, for instance, are be posted to their My DMV account rather than just snail mailed.
Representative White?
Could you just remind us of the time frame for when it has been determined that a bad check or insufficient funds were sent to DMV? What is the process for notifying people that it was, they were insufficient funds? And how much time do they have to pay the funds, and when the penalties start to incur?
Sure. There are no additional penalties. There's just the flat, I believe it's $28 for an insufficient fund fee.
$20?
Once we are notified by the bank, and every bank is different, it could clear within 2 days, it could clear within 4 days. It depends on when we're notified by the bank that it had not cleared. Once we get that report, that's when we send out the letters notifying them that their payment was not accepted and the payment is due in full. And from the date of that letter is 30 days.
Date, and that's from the date the letter was sent out, or?
Correct.
And it's snail mail, not electronic mail.
If they have My DMV, it would go to their online account,
Okay. Instead of snail mail, or can you just?
Both.
Okay, thank you.
unless they've opted to not receive snail mail.
Representative Burke?
And you don't need to specify the 30 days.
Not within this section. It does appear in other sections as far as hearing notification of suspension.
Section 22. Actually, I don't know why I had a note. I don't know, throw you off a little bit if we were going from 7 to 8. Just regarding the smuggler's notch piece. I don't have the DMV checked off as under stockages, but you had requested section 8, smuggler's notch, which you had requested the increase in the fines. Right?
Correct.
So I guess as far as hearing from you,
Thought we had come in previously.
yeah, I just didn't, I have some notes in here, but I didn't check you off as having previously commented on that. That's all I was. You know, that everybody else remembers that better. I just didn't check that section off, and the DMV did comment on the $10,000 to the $20,000 in the penalty on this month. It was your requested language.
If there are additional questions, we can certainly come back and those.
I guess we're on 22 then, I'm flipping ahead.
22 K vehicles. They're also known as Japanese mini trucks. I know we spoke a little bit during the overview at the beginning of the session. These are the manufactured in Japan. They were, and there are other countries, but they are not allowed to be imported into the US unless they're 25 years or older. We've always registered them. We required an inspection first. This is just to codify something that we're already doing in practice. They are roadworthy. They can be inspected. They're just a smaller size vehicle, not the go-karts that are in the parade. And this would also add some specifications as far as what the definition of a mini truck is, or a K vehicle.
This language is all originated with a Senate request or Senator request, not the DMV.
This was, yes, that was from the Senate.
And you're saying that, if I understand it correctly, that Deputy Commissioner, that you've always had the policy that these could be, as long as they passed inspection, if they were imported, they could pass inspection, they could register.
Correct.
There seemed to be some confusion about that. This just further clarifies what already exists. Is that what your testimony is then?
Putting in statutes, codifying what we already do. There were some constituents, I think, that were confused, or there was some misinformation about whether or not we registered them. We always have, they are able to be inspected, and I think this is just codifying that practice.
Is this expanded any further than what was already happening?
It does not. It also includes a definition. And I believe there's something in here that states that the transportation committee or the traffic committee is not able to add any subdivisions or restrictions. It's C, 1044C.
Shall not adopt any rules or ordinance that would have the effect of prohibiting.
On the road as a pleasure vehicle, it would be treated the same as a pleasure vehicle, and on a farm as a farm truck, it would be treated the same as a farm truck.
Other political subdivisions, seeing that towns can't take specific action on Kia trucks, is that towns and municipalities, is that what other
Prohibit that.
political subdivisions? So if a town wanted to ban the trucks, they couldn't. Is that the way it is works now? Can you make individual municipalities ban certain makes and models?
So that there are instances, I was just talking with the secretary that ATVs, for instance, there are rules depending on the municipality which will allow ATVs. I think what this is trying to get at is that because this is considered a pleasure vehicle, just like a car or a truck, that it shouldn't be treated any differently from a car or a truck.
What does a farm truck get for advantages over a vehicle, I guess?
There's a small registration fee, but you're only allowed to drive within 150 miles of your farm. And it can only be used for farm purposes. Like you want to pick up grain, transporting hay, can only be used for that purpose. It can't be used for personal use.
That's different than putting a triangle on the back.
You can also use that as well. I'm not sure if the restrictions are the same for the triangle as far as how far you can go. Those are usually used for the big farm tractors traveling between the farms back and forth.
Okay. Representative Webb?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, wasn't there some conversation about hay vehicles that were produced after a certain year versus earlier ones? And I don't remember the specifics. Can you just
So,
remind me of that?
Federally, they're not allowed to be imported unless they're 25 years or older.
Okay.
And the only mini trucks that we've seen to register have been 25 years or older.
And is that in the definition here somewhere? I'm not seeing it, or
It
is
is.
that
That's not,
assumed?
it's a federal standard. So
It's a federal standard.
It's
So
not
we
included in
don't, so
ours.
our legislation doesn't need to reflect that. If it's federal.
Correct. It would trump ours. So it would be assumed.
So that's a rolling number, I'm assuming, 25 years, so they continue to make them, but they just got hit the 25-year.
They get it 25 years before they can be imported.
Can't bring in a new one.
Can't bring a new
It was
one.
made-
There are some manufacturers that are in the process of creating mini trucks that will be federally acceptable. But as far as these specific K vehicles, they must be 25 years old. Or
You know, the rationale behind that, I don't know. Why was 25 years for?
it had to do with emissions.
Well, you figure the emissions would have cooled over time. It's weird that it'd be rolling. You figure they just have a date after such. Yeah, I know you're not.
Yeah, I don't have the specifics as far as
It's
the,
just weird why it's a rolling and not like, all right, anything before or after a certain.
Any reason why other towns, I guess you're saying, I'm sorry, the part about the other towns is they're saying it's not. It is a pleasure vehicle, therefore it would be treated as all other pleasure vehicles. It's not like it. So it's all ATVs are not allowed on roads unless acted by the municipality to allow them.
correct,
You have to take action to allow them versus taking action to not allow them.
municipal road.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about? It? So this is, it's my understanding, it's basically, this is for effect. This is already the policy. This is a version of already existing procedure, and there's no problem from the DMV's perspective to highlight what you consider already existing practice in all of section 24 and 22 and 23.
Correct. We're not opposed at all to keeping this in.
Do you know of any towns that have banned these or no?
We do not.
No.
I haven't heard any complaints or anything specific to what this would include.
Is there any particular need to publicize this in some way, or is this I see a group of advocates that want it and but it doesn't change anything on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
It seems like particularly. So we're gonna have sections that are for one vehicle, and we're gonna have sections that just reinforce what we already do. Boy, we're really getting to the troubles in the world. And we've pretty much solved the smuggler's notch issue to the one truck that got stuck last year, and we're gonna whack them. So we're getting through some real meaty substance in this bill. I'm sorry, Secretary Sugar, I always welcome your input if you have something to add.
No, thank you, and I'm sorry to do that. I know you weren't counting on me.
No, we're happy to have
I
you.
just thought I think the deputy commissioner made the point that I would reinforce. This is simply to clarify any confusion that might be out there among either owners of K trucks, potential owners of K trucks, or even inspection stations. There's been a lot in the news. There's a lot, if you look on social media, if you're interested in a K truck, the state of North Carolina had to make many changes to allow them legally. We started getting some inquiry. We actually know some people with them, and the people that have them here in Vermont had said, gosh, we had no problem doing this. So we're really just trying to, as Matt said, make it clear as a bell. There's no question. And, it could be arguably unnecessary because we do register them today, but this would facilitate anyone's guide. It's sort of like no harm, no foul, I think is our position on this. And it also removes the doubt on behalf of, either a service station who's unclear, whether you present this vehicle for inspection. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Somebody told me they saw YouTube in North Carolina doesn't allow this. I've never seen one before, so that's really the reason for it. As far as the piece on the municipal governments, I think our intention is really just to be sure that no one interprets this to be taken like an ATV, because in the case of an ATV, whether it's a side-by-side or a single ATV, the local jurisdiction can appeal to the Agency of Transportation for permission for ATVs to run on our roads in their geographic jurisdiction from A to B. They have to define where they want them to go. And we will go out and we'll look at safety considerations. And it's sort of similar to allowing VAS to run alongside of a highway if there's a bridge and they've got to get beyond the bridge. So if our traffic engineers see no obvious concerns, we authorize the use of ATVs on that section of road. And we work with VASA in that case, which is sort of the vast of the ATV world. And so the intent of incorporating K-trucks into that thinking was simply so that through no fault of any local board, let's say they don't think of this as a bigger side-by-side and therefore you can't run it. Just to try to eliminate any question, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Representative Powell?
Yeah, I think we've talked about ATVs and how different municipalities allow them. And you're saying on state roads versus municipal roads.
Correct. That's what I said. I mean, on a back road, that's up to the local jurisdiction.
Municipal
But
road.
if you've got a class 1 road, like 117 or 116, 105 going up through Newport, 114 going through Canaan, 111 and I believe it's up in Derby. It depends, the Northeast Kingdom seems to be more welcoming, but wherever it is, it's not currently legally allowed, but we will allow it if a community tells us we would like this. We believe it's a choice of recreation and our issue is safety. In fact, the 3 commissioners ago signed a deal with New Hampshire that allows New Hampshire registered ATVs into Canaan, Vermont. Because at that time, there wasn't fuel in that part of northern New Hampshire. I mean, there was, but it'd be either in Colebrook away from Pittsburgh. And now there's fuel in West Stewartstown. And so, sort of easing otherwise unnecessary restrictions for areas of Vermont that welcome this type of recreation. And we're not trying to push it on any community. But what that did is that allowed an equally registered through VASA an ATV who departs Canaan, Vermont, do 1,000 miles of trail in New Hampshire. So the value there of reciprocity through cooperating in that case, the DMV cooperating with Canaan, really, I will tell you, the people in that part of Vermont really appreciated that. And as did people in New Hampshire at that point, because they could get fuel much more conveniently than otherwise could. Now that's changed. There's a new station there now. But so that's our position on ATVs. It's really the local community. We will not, it's not about whether we like them or not. We don't have a position. All we're concerned about is if they want to go from A to B, they have to tell us what that route is. And if we don't see any safety concerns, we'll approve that.
All right, I mean, you're just clarifying, I wasn't aware that they were allowed on state highway, yeah, but.
And if we see a safety
Certain
cons-
areas, yeah.
In one case in Derby, we said, no, we won't allow that, but what about this?
Yeah.
And we came to agreement, you know, so we really try to work with the community.
Thank you.
Representative Casey.
Well, about 14 years ago or whatever, maybe 13 years ago, I first became a few years into after being a selectman there in Hubbardton, we went through and made it so ATVers could ride our roads. And then I think Route 30, they have to squarely go right across and
To cross the road.
yeah.
Same with the snow.
But we haven't had any problems. We had more problems before we did it. Cause they would get out in the roads and, wow, I'm not supposed to be out there, and not everybody, but some people would, you know, give it some juice going from one place to the other, cause they didn't want to get caught, so. I don't know, it hasn't been, and towns around us have been doing the same thing, and Orwell's, I don't know, they got some sort of thing they're working on now to try to get them on there, but they were driving on the roads anyways. And I don't know if law enforcement was really targeting them, the guys, you know, for the most part, they're just out enjoying Vermont, basically, so but I think it's been good for us, so.
Representative Wells.
Yeah, Orleans County too. We've got a lot of towns that allow them, and it's been real good for everybody financially, recreationally, and we welcome them, bring them on, open up all of our towns. Let them roll.
And I might add, I did want to say that I know ATVers down my way appreciated the easing the restrictions. They're definitely happy with that.
Okay. Interesting paths that we take, where we go. We're going to section 28 now, I think.
Yes. So manner of display, this is, I think I'll use the word clarifying. What the intent was originally for manner of display of license plates. I don't think it was very clear that there should be no covering over the numbers on a license plate. It should be put on the vehicle the way that it was given to the driver. This is clarifying by adding language to say that there should be no covering over the letters or the numerals on a license plate. We had discussed earlier the business locally that was creating the colors around the outside of the plate, or around the outside of the numbers. This says that you cannot do that, which clarifies. There's also some clerical corrections.
It was mentioned, I guess, some kind of loophole piece. I guess I thought it was understood that you couldn't do this, but apparently it came up that it was unclear. So that's what you're trying to do here or something.
A little ambiguous.
Is it true the Vermont Strong Plate's the only plate allowed on the front still at this point, or the two versions of Vermont Strong Plate, I believe, or
Right.
What's
It's
the
the only option.
both of them are in statute or only?
I don't know if it's both allowed. Yeah.
What was the other one?
Those are the only
There's two
two.
versions of the Vermont Strong Plate.
The original.
I don't remember we ever actually pushed the.
It used to be the 400 plate Champlain one there too, but I think we took that out. Yeah, no, but that used to be allowed too.
But it's
I think they took it out, but we could just verify that.
the Vermont Strong Plates and that's it. Otherwise you have to have a Vermont plate on the front. It's still required to have a front plate.
Right.
I sort of on thinking, sort of on that same topic. Has the agency looked at, because there's been discussion, let's just get rid of the front plate, as can save money or whatever,
No,
just, just. Any comment on that?
That was a hot topic. I think there's a lot more to it. A lot of other factors. So I think that can be decided right now.
So the agency's like, no, we want to keep the front plate.
For now.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, I just want to comment, it used to be, because of law enforcement. What's the issue? I mean, if that's still,
That's something we would want to have them weigh in on. Absolutely.
Representative Casey.
Shouldn't you make a consideration for a Yankees plate or a Red Sox plate?
Only one though.
I don't know about Yankees,
Yeah, which one, but it can only be one of them.
Probably have a lot more collisions if they start.
Ironically enough, the former Secretary Sue Minner there, when she was on this committee, we looked at trying to buy the logos for sports teams.
Yeah,
Oh, no, you'd be shocked at what percentage we had to get back.
oh, yeah.
Organization, so that didn't go anywhere, but we wanted to, you know,
So-
New England Patriots. And-
Really big Boston fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt, is there in the last part of this, in the very last line, it says something. Thereon shall be plainly legible at all times as provided pursuant to subsections of this section. Are there times that it wasn't required, or something? Why did we need to add in as provided pursuant? Was there a time, is there, where you can't have, you don't have to have a? Or, temporary or in transit, oh, maybe it's a little bit different. Registration shall be kept entirely unobscured and the numerals therein shall be plainly legible at all times. As provided in this.
Pursuant to A,
area,
subsection A.
as pursuant to subsection A.
I think that's just a clarification. So it ties back to number plates.
There's nothing extra to that particular class.
Suggested by our legal.
Page 36, there, at least the version we're working off of. I don't think as provided pursuant must be just more clerical in nature or.
Correct. That was suggested by our legal counsel.
Doesn't change anything, the policy wise, just
It is not.
clerical and pointing to.
Must be displayed the same way as in subsection A.
I realize this, but yeah, so 28. Other questions on 28? 29. Okay, this was not the NZ requested language, this was added in the Senate, right?
Correct. It was added by the Senate. At face value, it would seem to make sense that there are some issues that DMV has with that. And I'm sure there are other people that can speak more to this. Not all OEM exhausts have a stamp or a sticker, and it would be very hard to identify that at inspection, especially when you have a guard over the exhaust. So now requiring the inspection station to break that down to try to inspect if that exhaust has the stamp or the sticker on it. And in some cases, it does not. So that's DMV's position on that.
Are there other means if they had the proof of purchase of this thing, would there be a way to prove, I mean, is that saying it's not on the thing, but they prove?
I think there would be unintended consequences. I don't think that's out of the question. I'm sure there are other ways. But I don't think the purchase order would tell you if it was, it may not tell you that it was an OEM part. And that could also be a problem.
It's my understanding that the EPA marking is embossed in the pipe, not a sticker.
I was told that. I'm also hearing that not all OEM parts have that.
Right, if they're not approved, they
Right.
wouldn't have it.
I was told that there are parts that are acceptable on a motorcycle that would not have the embossed.
Acceptable to the EPA.
Not sure. I think that there are.
So the EPA is using it to measure noise levels.
Exhaust levels.
Yes. Noise. Which
Or
emissions. It's not emissions, it's noise.
Decibels.
Decibels, yeah, okay.
So there are people that could speak more to that.
Yeah.
That would hopefully be able to answer that better.
And pardon me if you said this and I missed it, and this is in here because it was unclear in the past, or why?
This was an addition suggested by the Senate.
Okay, But and what was the problem?
As far as intent, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot to do with the noise issues and the noise bill.
But this is a change of practice for the DMV?
This would be a change of practice.
And the DMV is saying that not all exhaust may or may not be identified, but that's contested.
Correct.
It's also potentially difficult to inspect. The DMV didn't request it, but so are you saying that you,
We would be opposed to this. I think there would be a lot of unintended consequences without any research. So we're opposed to this section.
is there a difference for inspection stations? Do they all, I guess it may sound silly, but if you are an inspection station, then you have to be able to inspect a motorcycle as well, or is there separate qualifications
There
for
is-
inspecting a motorcycle? You go anywhere for a motorcycle inspection, or there only?
I don't believe you can go anywhere. I think there are certain inspection stations that will do
Just
that.
because you're a Vermont State inspection doesn't mean you do motorcycles.
Correct.
Are there special rules just for motorcycles in any?
There is a whole separate section in the inspection manual. Just,
So when we were hearing on section 24 in regards to changes, that was specifically geared toward pleasure vehicle.
yeah, I should clarify that's very specific to pleasure vehicles.
That wouldn't affect any commercial vehicle.
Commercial vehicles are
So
entirely separate.
none of what we're proposing for inspection changes have anything to do with anything other than a pleasure vehicle, or that's how the term is. That's pleasure vehicle,
Pleasure vehicles, which include trucks, small trucks,
light duty trucks.
ski trucks. Yeah.
But does not, those inspection changes have nothing to do with any other vehicle or other motorcycle, okay. And the rules and the inspection have a whole separate piece related to motorcycles. So we haven't looked at.
Correct.
And are there a certain number of inspection stations just for motorcycles?
Yes.
Could you,
We can get you a list
could
of,
you make a note of, or like, I kind of like at least to see. We don't need a full presentation of every requirement, but I didn't realize they were a subset and how many there are, and then perhaps we might be able to hear from more than one. We're going to hear from absolutely one. I think I'm excited about that. I mean, I apologize. I'm not aware of how it works exactly. So, Representative Casey.
I do know one criteria, the person that's doing the inspection has to have a motorcycle license. That's what I heard.
so that would-
That's what, I don't know anything beyond that, but that's what I was.
absolutely, yeah, we can get all the data together for you for inspecting just motorcycles.
Can you confirm if that's true?
I don't know the specifics.
I'm saying, can you find out that? We're gonna need a little bit of a
Absolutely.
background on, I mean, I'd like to hear.
I know that you do need to be
You
certified.
probably know.
There is a certification for that.
Yeah, I have a truck and a trailer and there's, I went to one inspection, or I talked to somebody and they said, oh, we don't do those. And so I went to another. So I think, I'm not sure if they register for what they do, but they,
They do.
so they say upfront, we do these things.
They do. You need to apply and be certified to become an inspection mechanic. And then you also need to apply and be certified to become an inspection station.
Right, but then do they say, I'll do trucks and trailers, or I won't?
Right.
I'm just doing pleasure cars.
Yes, we can get that list so that you would know. I think it's posted on our website as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as a list of inspection stations for both.
Other questions? So in some of the previous testimony or when we reviewed this section, it was suggested by one of our committee members that perhaps there should be some level of perhaps an education piece that would have to be sort of delivered out to that group of motorcycle type of people that would be impacted, and that perhaps there should be some sort of staged, stepped, I don't want to use the word compliance. In other words, if it becomes illegal today, you go in for your inspection, you didn't know it or not, you an opportunity to get a warning or to come back before you get next year's inspection, that it would have to be replaced or updated. I'm curious if there's a DMV thought. I know you're opposed to the section. Have we done similar implementations of something like that when it relates to motor vehicles, any kind of staged or education and staged?
Are you suggesting an advisory and with a notation that you'd have to come back and have it replaced next year?
If it could be an advisory for 1 year or 2 year, and then it would have to be, then it would become a failure in that particular case. In other words, if this is effective June 30th and somebody shows up July 2nd and they have no idea that it's the case, and now their motorcycle is uninspectable, even though it's safety wise ready to go,
Mhm.
But given some kind of period to say the next time, or within 24 months or 18 months or 12 months that you don't have to comply, can that be managed within the DMV?
It could be managed, right? Currently, right now, it's a failure. Regardless,
Straight failure.
it's a failure.
Based on the.
Based on this.
Yes, right.
And so we wouldn't be able to do anything as far as a waiver.
If we
At our
change the language and.
If you change the
we'd be able to manage such a,
Yes,
have you done something like that for other implemented?
the emissions waiver, previously, we've done that for pleasure vehicles.
Yeah, I think I was the one that brought up, that, you know, this should have a staged thing. You'd want 1 or even 2 years where, you know, you sort of let the person know, hey, by the way, your muffler isn't gonna pass in 2027.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. or 20
Staged as far as
Just like-
implementation.
Yeah, just to let, and that would also with education, you know, people who are gonna buy mufflers in the next, you know, 24 months, you know, realize, oh, okay. And dealers and motorcycle supply folks could let them know too.
Representative, please.
How are they gonna test for noise? Anybody know? Everybody,
I think that's what
every
this is trying
inspection
to-
station is gonna have to have one of those meters. Then how far away do they stand from the motorcycle?
I'm not an expert, but I would say, I don't read that.
It wouldn't be
They're
tested.
saying that would say that the muffler either does or does not have an approval from an EPA, meaning it's embossed in there or it's stickered in some way that would be, this would
Yeah.
have to be an EPA approved muffler.
Yeah, to clarify, the goal, I believe, was if it's stamped by the EPA, it meets the noise level. So we wouldn't be using noise meters.
So I assume different mufflers create different levels of noise. But they're either approved or they're not at a federal level, is right? Okay. Represent what?
Is there anything on the DMV webpage where you can find a list of currently registered inspection stations?
Yes.
Can you tell me where that is?
In a search field, you should be able to type in inspection station.
At that, and I saw information on how to register as an inspection station.
Under enforcement, maybe on the left, on the tab, this is enforcement. Otherwise, I can get you a link. I can.
Okay, along my DMV.
Yeah. They've voted out yet?
Maybe if you could just send us the link.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. Because I'm thinking that if there's a list, there might be a list that breaks up motorcycle inspections, auto inspections.
I believe it's a downloadable list. Well,
I don't know how many motorcycles are registered in the state of Vermont? Or ballpark? Any idea?
I think I did have it. Oh, yeah, actually. May.
Imagine with a
I
shorter,
had that with me with the inspection testimony.
imagine with a shorter season, it's probably not as many as some other states.
I no longer have it with me, but I can definitely get that for you.
Okay, we'd be interested in that. We'd be interested in a little more background in general. How many inspection stations there are and how the rules are a little bit different for motorcycles and what kind of subsection of Vermonters we're impacting here. I don't, we don't really know I don't know what kind of numbers we're talking about, what kind of number of people we're potentially impacting. Don't have any idea what the scope of what we're looking at. Represent what?
Just a statement here, you talk about motorcycle sound and stuff like this, and I can understand those jack beds that are at those high decibel levels and stuff like that, but our Harley Davidson is actually a beautiful, glorious sound. And it's America. So we gotta go easy on those Harleys.
Thank you.
My parents had Harleys when I was growing up.
2031, that's 5 years from now. Okay.
It's America.
So, yeah, we'll get back on the schedule on this and this week, and with that piece. And
You have to use that.
other questions or comments on? Kind of cues us up for our very much appreciated witness, probably knows far more about all the questions that have come. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner,
See you
we'll be,
tomorrow.
we'll be seeing you again soon, I'm sure.
Probably.
We got a little ways to go still. And I really appreciate, John, I haven't met you before, but you, I appreciate you coming and
Okay to come up here?
absolutely, we're welcome to have you up and
Well, thank you for having me. My name is John Lyon. I give you a little background on myself. Was a practicing attorney for a number of years, lost some family members in a family business, which is a Harley Davidson dealership. Left the practice and been there 20 years. We also acquired a automotive shop. So I both have my inspection license in both the automotive and the motorcycle dealership as well. So we were comfortable with what the changes that have occurred over the years. We think DMV certainly moved in the right direction on a lot of fronts, and certainly this committee, the discussion, I think, around moving to safety is sort of been very well received with our inspectors, both dealership, the Harley Davidson dealership and the automotive shop. So I've been doing that 20 years. I do have a prepared statement if you don't mind, and I'll read that, and then I can answer some of the questions that were posed by committee members. But thank you for inviting me to testify with a focus on page 36, which is motorcycle exhaust requirements. I want to make sure I use your time wisely. The section goes after a stamp, in my opinion, not a real problem, which is excessive noise. The federal rules this section points out to are not as simple as they sound. The section incorporates a code of federal regulation. So if you turn to the section under 40 CFR, which I'm just going to call 158, the label is on the motorcycle itself. It is called Motorcycle Noise Emissions Control Information. And it tells you that the motorcycle was built. When it was built, it met the EPA noise standards under the federal test procedure. Simply put, 158 is the label on the motorcycle itself. Under 40 CFR 205-169, the label or the mark is on the exhaust system or a component. Two separate labels. So 169, which is the label or the mark on the exhaust system, the wording then changes depending on what kind of exhaust product it is. There's one label for original equipment. There's one label for replacement exhaust systems. There is one label for different exhaust components. There is one label for competition only systems. And then there's also one label for the pre-1982 systems, which the section outlines. This is why this is more of a find the stamp problem. It's more of a classification problem. Federal law distinguishes between the label on the motorcycle and the mark on the exhaust system or the component. So this bill is not simply asking an inspector to locate a marking. It is asking that person to determine what kind of product is installed and what federal label language applies to it. And that misses the real inspection question. Section 158, 169 tell manufacturers which labels to put on a motorcycle or exhaust product when it is built. They do not answer the practical question facing a Vermont inspection mechanic today, which is whether the bike in front of them is improperly muffled or excessively loud now. That is the core problem with the provision. It is important to point out you can make a quiet bike fail this bill and a loud bike pass. A state inspection should not become a challenge of finding a faded federal stamp. When I testified in the Senate, I brought a brand new exhaust with me. Many members had difficulty locating the stamp. That experience reflects exactly what technicians will face in the real world. Heat, water, road grime, and time make these markings hard to locate, but none of these things make a motorcycle louder. Just as important, this will increase the time required to inspect a motorcycle. If a technician has to spend additional time locating a stamp, removing cowls, determining whether it is legible, and just deciding whether a kind of exhaust product is installed, that time has a cost. That cost will ultimately be passed on to the customer. So this provision does not just create confusion in an inspection bay. It also risks increasing inspection time and inspection costs for law-abiding riders without meaningfully reducing noise. This provision will not create much meaningful change aside from irritating the technicians who perform inspections. It fails to solve the problem. This provision is both under-inclusive and over-inclusive at the same time. It can miss bikes that are actually loud and catch bikes that are not. A motorcycle could have a visible EPA compliant label and still be noisy because of the internal alteration or removed baffling. Another motorcycle could have an intact, effective muffler and still fail because the required marking is difficult to locate, faded, or because the exhaust did not go through the exact federal labeling process. It also creates a practical inspection problem because the legal standard depends on locating a marking, not evaluating the actual exhaust condition. The federal rules say the label or mark must be readily visible when the visible position when installed, but that requirement was written for manufacturing and labeling, not for years later verification in an inspection bay after hundreds of heat cycles, corrosion, road debris, and wear. It also risks making inspections less consistent, not more consistent. Vermont is already trying to revise the inspection manual so it focuses on genuine safety issues and provides clear, consistent guidance. This section moves in an opposite direction because inspectors will inevitably disagree about whether a particular marking is present, legible, original, or visible enough. There's also a used parts and aftermarket problem. The federal labeling rules use different language for different products, including replacement systems and systems intended for older motorcycles. That makes the field question much messier for Vermont inspectors dealing with older bikes, aftermarket systems, replacement components, or mixed setups. And respectfully, if the goal is to reduce noise, the law should target excessive noise, remove baffles, straight pipes, cutouts, and similar modifications. Other states do exactly that. Connecticut, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine all focus on noise, baffles, cutouts, and amplification, not a stamp. Instead, they send in an inspector with a motorcycle where the baffles are removed, and they penalize the inspection stations failing to follow the current law. Vermont should do the same instead of turning inspection into a search for a stamp. Vermont already requires vehicles to be good mechanical condition and properly equipped, and the current inspection standards already address mufflers and baffling. When I was in high school, I worked at a beverage center in Northfield, counting bottles and handling bottle and can returns. From time to time, I also helped in the liquor store. We had a sign above the register that said you must be 21 years or old to buy liquor. The kind that Vermont Liquor Control requires bars have on display. Every so often, Liquor Control would send in a young and underage person to try to buy alcohol and test whether we were following the law. If we rejected the underage sale, the officer would come in afterward, tell us we did a good job, and remind us to keep it up. Not once did the officer stop and ask whether the sign was hanging in exactly the right place. Why? Because they were focused on the real problem. They were testing whether the law was actually being followed. They didn't ask the legislature to enhance signage. The better answer is to educate and test inspection stations on the standards we already have. If the concern is that some shops are passing bikes with removed baffles, then test for that. Use enforcement, use bait bikes, find out which stations will pass a bike with a baffle removed. That would target the real problem. I understand the House may want to move with a larger motor vehicle bill. My request is narrower. Please remove or rewrite Section 29 because it creates inspection confusion without directly targeting the bikes that are actually too loud. Based on DMV that they're against this provision, respectfully, that should carry weight. They are the ones that have to make this enforceable in the real world. If they're telling us this is not the right standard, I would respectfully encourage the House to take that seriously. The real problem with loud motorcycles is usually removed baffles or altered internals, not whether an inspector can find a tiny federal marking on a hot, aged, road-worn exhaust. Thank you.
Representative Burke and then Representative Case.
So did you present this testimony in the Senate?
A limited amount of testimony with I brought the exhaust in with me. And I believe that would suffice, that was going to cover the concerns that I had with the provision, that they wouldn't be able to find the marking, and so that would essentially end the provision.
If they absolutely.
Yes.
Representative Casey.
So, say I drive around and my baffle's out of my bike. The day before I go into the inspection, I slide those baffles back in, tighten the Allen wrench. Yeah, so I agree with you. I think it should be, if they're out and about riding, you can tell the motorcycle's really loud, they go investigate it further, and then it should be up to the officer, I think. It shouldn't be, it's an easy way to get around it. Just what I just said. And you had mentioned it during your testimony also, so.
Mhm. It's been my experience in the 20 years that people that ride around without baffles end up being pulled over,
Yeah.
and if they don't have a current inspection, sticker, whatever the case may be, they're ticketed for that, and then it's moved on. It eliminates the question of decibel levels in the testing because the baffle's not there. It's defective equipment of some sort. I'm not a law enforcement expert, but I know that they've rolled in where they've been given a ticket and they need to replace the exhaust. It's not as easy as it used to be to remove baffles and put them back in. It used to be very easy to just tighten it up. It's much more complex.
Did you, and I appreciate you coming in very much. You said that they deal with this very differently in Connecticut in terms of to get at noise. Is that what I was saying? That
Well,
direct approach to attack, to go after motorcycle noise?
Yes, sir. So I mean, every state has obviously its different focus and laws. In talking with other dealers, many of them have just said that they're constantly tested, where bait bikes are rolled in and their DMV enforcement says you pass, you failed. We've experienced that with our automotive area, and I think the same process could be implemented. I know, DMV, it creates some additional work for them, but I think if the focus of this committee is to reduce noise, that's what we should be focused on, is test the stations that are allowing these motorcycles to roll out of there with no baffles, which it's been my experience that happens.
So saying you can have the baffles out, but still have the sticker and anything else, you would not be failing?
What I'm suggesting is that our dealership, if you do not have baffles, the inspection manual is very clear. It tells you that you may not inspect the motorcycle, so it fails.
But you're also saying that sometimes some inspection stations, they get out without baffles. There's
Well,
no consistency there.
Yes, sir. My presumption is that there are motorcycles rolling around that find their way, just like rusty frames in the past that we dealt with, right? That seems to really be rust and whatnot. DMV's done a wonderful job both in educating and holding inspection stations accountable. In fact, we went through a very similar process many years ago where there was a vehicle that came through with rust at our automotive station and passed, and then 6 months later failed, and it went back to our inspector, in our station, and so it was an educational moment. I think that's how we solve this, because it's the inspection station. The inspection manual is very, very clear. It's very well done. It was was rewritten a few years ago by Dave Evans. I think he was involved with that, and he did a really masterful job in condensing and reducing and making it really overly clear.
Thank you. Representative White, you're up, and then Representative Hunt.
Thank you, John. Thanks for coming in. I
Thank you.
do remember we were
Of
on the
course.
board together.
Yes.
We would go,
Talking
yeah.
about economic development.
Exactly. Yeah, nice to see you. So thank you for your testimony. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So when a motorcycle has excessive noise, it's because there's a removed baffle, or could it also be a different muffler has been? I don't know a lot about.
Of course.
But so if you could just review what are the different components or changes that a motorcycle could display that
Sure.
would cause excessive
Of
noise?
course, that's a great question. So, this provision, I think, covers exhausts that are sold. Maybe they're acquired through Amazon or they're acquired in different places. It's just not been my experience. You're asking me to testify on my experience, and it's not been my experience that these exhausts are what's causing the noise out there. And the reason why is those exhaust systems that are acquired through Amazon or third parties that don't have any type of stamp, have poor chrome, have poor, their coating is poor. People spend a lot of money on these products. And so the last thing they want to do is install an exhaust that all of a sudden falls, that starts flaking and whatnot. So they're inexpensive. And so really predominantly, at least in our organization, the issue is the removal of baffles or the alteration, drilling out of an exhaust. So you could have an OEM exhaust that comes on a motorcycle where people, drill out the center of it in order to make it louder. It no longer passes inspection. It's very clear. That we don't see these vehicles coming into our facility at the rate that we used to because we've built that reputation for it just fails. And there's just no ifs, ands, or buts. They don't even get into our facility. This isn't like a car where the car is put up on a lift and then you say it fails and we're really sorry. We start the bike. We just say, hey, we can already tell this is not going to pass. And so then presumably they leave and they go find some other inspection station.
Okay, so a removed baffle, an altered baffle, or a drilled out exhaust, those are kind of the types of ways a motorcycle could be amended to have excessive noise.
Yes.
Okay. And one other question, which came up earlier, but since you have an inspection station for motorcycles, do you have any idea? So you've got an inspection station for autos and motorcycles. Any idea how many inspection stations in the state
I wouldn't know.
specify to motorcycles? No.
No, there are 8,000 Harley Davidsons in the state, roughly.
Thank you.
Ouch, you're up.
Yeah, John, thanks for your
Yes, sir.
experience bringing it to your air. And I think you bring up a point that, you might have a muffler that's not loud, it meets the requirements, but may not be properly stickered. But, and then I think this committee a couple of years ago looked at, well, maybe we'll measure the noise as to find out. I mean, I don't know if everyone agrees, but in my opinion, there are cars and motorcycles out there that have been modified to make noise. And that's, we know that it's happening, and I believe it is a safety issue. Or if you live along a road, it's a real problem. So you're suggesting that, hey, we can inspect mechanically whether there's been some modifications. I just did a quick little search here. Yes, motorcycle mufflers can be quite loud, even with baffles. And that baffles can reduce noise or tune or against that, or be tuned for a certain noise. So it's possible that there'd be mufflers that appear, they got baffles, everything's there, but they're still excessively noisy. So in that case, they would have to be passed if that was the requirement.
I believe the inspection manual already covers modified. So if that exhaust has been modified in a manner, then
But you could buy a new exhaust system that isn't been modified, but is louder than maybe an EPA muffler.
yes, the answer would be absolutely. An aftermarket exhaust can certainly be acquired that is louder than an OEM. And predominantly, it's defined as sort of a throatier, deeper sound. They're not rising to the level of the ones that are the complaints, the issues, in my opinion. But that's more of a subjective perspective. I just would suggest that the ones that we hear about are the ones that are generally been modified and are just passing through the cracks in one way or another. And so we're after all of them when in reality, and the stamp is really a real serious challenge.
Yeah. And sort of follow up, I wonder if we have inspection data for motorcycle inspections, pass and fail on mufflers. I'm sort of looking at
Certainly, yeah.
the commissioner.
I can see what, I'll also, there's a caveat. I would assume that they're probably getting that fixed before they go for the inspection or modifying it after the fact. So they may not be apples to apples, but I can certainly get stats on the number of failures for exhaust.
I would say, based on my experience, and I do live just off of 116, where the speed limit goes from 30 to 50. We certainly hear the motors, we hear all the cars and vehicles going by. But then we'll specifically hear some motorcycles for a long time. And, I think that's the issue we're trying to,
Of course.
find a solution for. Thank you.
And are you saying that those ones that you hear for a long time or you hear that have likely been altered as opposed to the original manufacturer or not? I mean, is that just too general?
I think I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to take a moment to say that John's a pretty humble guy, and I don't think you can find a better person or a better expert witness on this topic. His dealership is, and I don't even own a motorcycle, although I still have my license, but his dealership is ranked among the best in the country. Harley Davidson. And I take tremendous pride in what they do, and I had the pleasure of getting to know John a little bit through my work, but I think more importantly, the expertise that is pretty clear. And I think you're hearing me now. So I just wanted to take that point to say that. And then the last thing I'll say is for those of you that have seen the DMV Harley Davidson Livewire motorcycle, John's dealership put that together. Motorcycle is a manufactured motorcycle, but making it the first in the world that was a police motorcycle. It's constructed as dealership with help, I believe, from the Milwaukee Harley Davidson factory, and this dealership had to, really was recognized by Harley as uniquely available or able to convert a live wire to law enforcement package, and so it's been a good relationship. But it's the testimony. You really have an expert here for you.
Representative Wells.
Yeah, longtime Harley Davidson owner, night trains, fat boy stuff. I bought my leather at your store down there. And my brother Randy was the NEK captain for their Harley group for a while. My dad rode Harleys. My daughter even had a Harley for a while. She doesn't anymore. That potato sound of the Harley Davidson, that's a sound of safety. It doesn't have to be at that high decibel, but the manufacturer that comes through that their standard equipment, that's under control. And I think the bikers are safer because of that noise. Yeah.
This section, testimony wise, obviously the DMV is suggesting take it out, but you went a little further to say instead of taking it out, that there's adjustments that we could make or the direction that we go in terms of enforcement related to motorcycles. I guess it kind of be one of those topics for the committee is what direction do we want to go and what makes sense and whatnot. I think we're going to probably have to look at who else do we hear from and where else do we go on this particular subject. But I'm not a motorcycle person. I don't know anything about how hard it is, what the spot is, how hard it would be to inspect. That's the first I've heard about the federal regulation piece in 40 CFR. So we're going to have to hear a little bit more from our alleged counsel in that direction. From my perspective, sort of where are we going to go now and who else do we want to hear from? And I can't resist asking, would you like to talk about the section 24, since your other shop owns is an inspection station? Some of the, I don't know if you've read section 24, you saw it.
I think it's a wonderful bill. The entire bill is a great bill. I have no other comments with the exception of this one. And maybe let me reframe and suggest that I do not mean to modify this section. The section that we've been discussing, I think 29, my suggestion would be to completely remove it and focus on the law that is currently being done very, very well with maybe, and I'm not sure how these bills are working. I've not read the other one that is in the midst, but giving DMV a little more resources as it relates to holding dealers' inspection stations accountable. You know, we would invite that. We would invite an inspector to come in and test us on a regular basis as it relates to exhaust sounds. So let me be clear. I in no way suggest that we should modify this. It should be removed, and I think it's will be dealt with a great deal of upset with any state inspection, motorcycle inspector, and that has been doing it for a while is going to be really disappointed with this process, because it is removing cowls alone on certain models is going to take some serious time to do. You know, with Harleys, it's not terribly burdensome, but to DMV's point, there are shields that go over the top of this stuff. So, you know, I didn't ask my technicians to perform any analysis, but I could estimate another half an hour of time associated with this. So that's concerning. It's already quite a process.
Person White?
Yeah, so John, just to clarify, so you feel like the current standards for motorcycle inspections are, if they are followed appropriately, we don't have an excessive noise problem. It's when motorcycles are getting through an inspection when they really shouldn't be passed. Those are the motorcycles that are displaying excessive noise. And you're further suggesting that a little bit of enforcement on the part of DMV to periodically do random checks to our current inspection stations could be helpful to making sure that the current law is being followed.
I think it's the analogy is very much similar to rust. You know, what we that was such a challenging topic over the years. It's how much and what should be done with it, and frames and you name it. And it became a little more over time subjective. It's really cleaned up nicely and it's easy, and our inspectors can figure it out. So the law is already very, very clear. The inspection manual is very overly clear. I just don't think it's everyone follows it to the T. And in you know, looking back at our time frame, we've tightened up over the years. From, I would say 2006 was our kind of first year that we really tightened down on exhaust ourselves. And so we've got that reputation, but not, my only presumption is that some of these folks are just passing through the cracks, and whatever the manufacturer of the motorcycle is, they're just easily passing through the cracks, and it's just going to take some time to clean that up. But yes, the law is already very clear.
Thank you.
Any other questions in any other of the parts? If we have an expert in the field, it's a great chance to throw. I'd be willing to hear any questions on any other sections if the witness was willing to comment on them. And otherwise, I would say thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For coming in this morning. Really
Thank you.
appreciate all of your time. And
Thank you.
Takes away from your business, and we certainly are glad to hear such a praise about your
Thank you.
organization.
Just, so your statement, we'll get that so we can have it on the website. You'll provide it to
The statement that I just read,
yeah.
I certainly, if needed, I can do that.
Oh, yeah, we'll.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not recorded.
It is on.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. I just want to remove all my scribbles and different areas. Maybe I can clean it up a little bit if you don't mind.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Or just scan it, I guess, but yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah.
We should put it on there just so we can refer to it.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.